My name is Thomas Irwin. This is my workshop on combining real and organic instruments with electronic music. I'm a second year student at Point Blank Music School London. I started Point Blank in September 2020. As I said, my workshop on how I've had experience using real and organic instruments. I'm going to talk to you guys about my philosophy behind it. I'm going to go into some online resources, and I'm also going to hop into FL Studio. For me, there's many reasons why I started using real instruments and organic sounds in my music, but three main points really were to stand out from the crowd as the first one, because 2 years ago I was making music, and it was cool music, like the arrangement was cool and the melodies were cool, but if you put my music on a Spotify playlist with 30 others, you could never pick it out as the standout song. And for me that was kind of like a real issue, because obviously you want to have the song that stands out. It was just a bit bland. Around 11 or 12 years old, my heroes at the time were the big, we're talking Swedish House Mafia, Avicii, Calvin Harris. And for me, those guys, when you heard their songs, although they would have done it in a computer and in the box, their production sounded massive. They had huge guitars, they had mega pianos, their production sounded insane. I thought, how come in this day and age I can't do the same? When we've got the resources and utilities at our fingertips, why can't I do the same in this day and age? And that was one of the main reasons why I was like, okay, why not? Why not work with pianists? Why not work with guitarists and elevate my sound? The second point I've got is importance of others' experience in your productions. And what I mean by that is, let's say as an entry-level musician, you've got a song and you want to collaborate. Imagine working with someone who's got 20, 30 years even experience being an instrumentalist or a session musician, what they can do to your music. And I've had personal experiences where I've worked with pianists and I've said, here, I've got an arrangement for you. Can you play this on piano but also improvise? And I almost every time that happens use improvisation, because the experience of someone else touching your music is priceless. And as I said, if you want your music to stand out, the experience of others is always welcome. I promise you that. Finally, I've put Unique Soundscape down because for me, and I mentioned his name before, but let's look at Calvin Harris. When you listen to one of his songs, it's almost like it's got its own world. Every single sound, every single part of his record just sounds like it's in its own unique area. Even if, let's say, he's just using a bass guitar and a piano, it still sounds like it's his instrument, because he's just perfected the way you can create a whole world within a song. These guys that I've mentioned, the big guys, they were able to do this 10 years ago, where you may need a mega production budget, you may need the contacts, but in this day and age, we have everything here. We have the ability to do that from your bedroom. That's kind of my philosophy behind it. That's why I started this. Next, I'm going to talk about how working with real instruments can spark unique ideas. So I'm going to go into a project of my own, which I released last year. For this song, I started thinking, as I said, out the box a bit, how can I work with real instruments? And I wanted to work with a fiddlist. And I think it's fiddlist, because if I say fiddler, it sounds a little bit funny. But yeah, so I worked with a fiddlist. I thought, okay, this is going to be really cool, because who's worked with a fiddlist on a dance song? Eventually, I was able to capture that unique soundscape, and I'm going to kind of show you how I did that, how I just turned a fiddle sample, which was just a little melody that me and this guy did, and turn it into a song which ended up coming out on Dharma last year. It's literally something you could find on Splice, but we kind of just made a little catchy melody. And one thing that I think is so useful when working with instrumentalists and other musicians is you can have so much content, and within this hook there's so many micro and macro hooks as well. So straight away when I play this, I can hear there's a hook there. So I just chopped up this first hook, and then I'll duplicate that. And straight away we've got and okay, so now this is getting interesting. Okay, so now how can we turn this into a track? So let's add some piano. Let's add some variation on that. And then I'll add the top one. Sick. And then so now if I play that in context, and straight away it's like, oh, this is cool, and it sounds like nothing else. I can just keep building from there. So straight away it's like, okay, there's a song in this, because I've captured that unique almost soundscape with the fiddle, and it's got a nice beat. I don't want to go too much into processing, but I want to touch on a cool little technique I learned in FL Studio, and it's to do multiband sidechaining with stock plugins. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to quickly route everything to the mixer channel, and then I'm going to send this and the fiddle to one bus. And now on this bus, I'm going to put a fruity parametric EQ2 and then just put it on 3 bands. Now for the kick, that's on channel 1. I'm going to put a fruity peak controller, and this does nothing apart from creates an additional signal when the input hits. So you can see that. I'm just going to put the volume up. It's not actually going to affect the master volume, it's just going to change how much input there is. You can see here. Now I'm going to, on that EQ which I've just made for the bus, I'm going to assign the middle band to that signal, then invert it, so when the kick hits, the band's not going to pump up, it's going to pump down. So I'll just invert it with 0.5. And then now, every time that kick hits, that's going to duck. And let's say, for example, you can do this with a guitar and a kick. You're not going to want, unless you want it in that pumping effect, you're not going to want the whole guitar to duck when the kick hits. You might just want everything under 200 Hertz. And the same applies here. So, like I said, the instrument's playing here. You've got a piano and a fiddle. There's not much low end there, but still, it can be useful to, let's put this here. And straight away, you've got ducking without affecting the top signal. Let me just put an EQ before here to reduce some of that. But as you can see, it's causing a lot of like rumble down here. So if I put linear phase on, you can see it sorts a lot of that out. And that's just to prevent phase shifting pretty much. As you can see, everything now under 50 is nice and clean. So yeah, that's, I guess, I don't want to go too much into the processing, but I hope that's something useful that maybe some of you could learn from, or anyone online watching. That's kind of how I did this track, so I'll show you how that idea sparked this.
We can get through if we make up and have our worries left behind. Nobody else can save us, we won't change our mind.
Just the same, it's just the fiddle. And that's how you can kind of capture a unique soundscape and a unique track just from using organic instruments. So let me hop back into the slides here. I'm now going to give you guys some of the secret sauce here, which kind of changed the game for me. These are online resources which you're able to collaborate online with the most incredible musicians. So I've used 3 of these. I haven't used Musicversal, but a few of my friends have, and I will use it one day. Soundbetter and Airgigs. You're able to hire anything from beat makers to songwriters to cello players to fiddlers, if you really want, to absolutely everything. And Airgigs is very similar. Musicversal is you're able to have a virtual recording session online and almost like jam with a professional musician. And Fiverr, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Fiverr, and that's basically a place where there's both amateur and professional, but like everything in between. There's everything on Fiverr. So I've just put a few screenshots up of what these websites offer. So you can see here, Soundbetter. This is just like the tip of the iceberg. There's anything from cellists, bagpipe players, I mean that could be really cool, French horn. Similar to Airgigs, there's categories and subcategories of ways you can hire and work with people. Fiverr, again, I think a lot of you probably know Fiverr, and there's pretty much everything on there. But how do you collaborate virtually with no previous experience? And at an entry level, this can be quite intimidating, especially when your musical experience is all in the box. So these are some questions that I had for myself. I had no music theory experience, I knew nothing about instruments, I can't write musical notation, and I've never done an online collaboration before. The truth is, through experience, the way I've kind of done it is you just need to give your collaborator as much as possible. And if that means you're having to sing your croaky voice into your phone and send it to them, you've got to do it. If that means you've got to send MIDI patterns over, if you're wanting a brass solo and you obviously you don't know how to get that across, you might have to just record it in MIDI and send it over. And I'm going to show you another example in FL Studio here, and this is going to be like really exposing myself, but this is how I get my point across to collaborators. So you're going to hear some croaky singing and stuff here. You might laugh, but then you won't laugh because I'll show you the outcome. But anyway, I did a song called La La, and this is through Airgigs. I hired a Brazilian choir. Sounds crazy, but it's possible. This is what I sent to them.
La 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 la.
Yeah, I sound like a mug, but this is what you get from it.
La 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 la.
I mean, like, it's a quality sample and it's unique. You'll probably laugh more at this.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I've got something a bit different to play today. It's got some of that Brazilian swing.
But then for the track.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I've got something a bit different to play today. It's got some of that Brazilian swing, you know? Yeah.
Also, I don't know how to get a point across to like a brass player, and I wanted trumpets for this particular song, so I just had to map it out in MIDI. But then what you get is and you can also hear how I touched on earlier, the improvisation of someone with experience that can add little harmonies and little riffs. Again, mega advantage of working with other people. Okay, so I don't really want to like talk about using instruments within electronic music without touching on VSTs, because VSTs are getting very good to the point where I'm sure we all know, especially the ones that emulate real instruments, they're using human error in there. Like, for example, the piano, you can manipulate how hard the hammer hits, pedal noises. Me and my friends, we have a lot of debate about whether, of course, how good VSTs are getting, is it actually worth re-recording and using real instruments? I thought, while I'm here, let's play a little game where I'm going to play 2 tracks, one's a VST and one's a plugin, and you guys tell me which one you think is real. So I'm going to play A, and then I'm going to play B. I'm going to ask you to put your hand up and tell me which one you think is the real one, okay? One's a plugin. Some piano. Put your hand up if you think A was the real one. I assume the rest of you think B. I hope so. A was the VST. Yeah? VSTs are getting good, man. They're getting very good. Let's try this again. Okay? Hands up if you think A was the real one. Okay, yeah, that's right. Majority of you got that. But I think it just shows that how good these VSTs are getting. The fact that in a lot of these plugins you can change the human error, how on grid it is like pretty crazy. What should you use, VST or real recording? And the actual truth is, it's up to you guys. There's definitely benefits to one and benefits to the other, but I think a VST can be absolute quality, especially if you're traveling or if you're not able to work with real musicians. But are you reducing the quality that you could achieve through a real recording? I don't know. I think also in context of what you're doing. So if you're using piano as a layer in a mix down and not something that's at the forefront, sure, a VST will work. But if you're using it as a piano solo within a song, then it's completely up to you. Maybe a real recording will be better. I would love to accept any questions, whether it's about being a student at Point Blank or just about anything in general. But thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Cheers. If anyone's got any questions, just put your hand up. I'll answer now. Yes? Yeah, I mean, budget is everything. Especially like, although in the past, like, as I said, 10 years ago, you don't need the production budget to have a big studio. But working online, it depends also on who you're working with. Like, if you want to work with a top musician, you could be spending a few £100s, but especially on Fiverr. And, you know, like I showed you that Caribbean voiceover guy. That was like £15. And it's something so unique that you can add to your song. And I mean, it's just about searching online as well. Like, obviously, if you're wanting to get something extremely high quality, you can increase your production budget there. Nowadays as well, there's so much talented musicians. Nothing's really mega expensive. It's if you, instead of going out on a night out, why don't you invest in a pianist? And that might answer your question, I think. But yeah, anything else? No? Oh, one more, yes?
At what point do you start approaching these artists? Is that already at the beginning, or do you already lay out the song?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think it depends, like, what's your vision from the start? Are you wanting to start a song with like some sexy piano and then you're thinking, oh, I need to hire a pianist? Or what if you're doing a tech house song, but then you're like, oh, some electric guitar could be cool here? And it just depends on project to project basis. Like, and I think, like I said, online, especially when you're hiring musicians, you can at any point just go on to Soundbetter, for example, or Airgigs, and find someone and they can do it the same night. So I think it's definitely on like a project to project basis. For me anyway, I've done both, where I've started a song with a musician, like that fiddle one I showed you earlier, but then there's been times where I've done a full production and I'm like, oh, do you know what, it'd be great to have some real strings here. So I think like it's all personal, if you kind of get me, I think. So yeah.
And if you have a melody, you send it over already like 2 weeks ago, and you're like, I want to change one note or
Yes.
whatever, can you send it back?
Yes, and I mean, look, there's definitely a difference from working in a session with a musician, where you can kind of say, oh, can you play in a different style? Can you play, change that note here? Because obviously when you're online, it's a bit more back and forth, and obviously the advantage is you're able to do it from home. But I mean, it depends on who you're working with. A lot of people, like on the websites I mentioned, a lot of people offer revisions. So that's basically, they can send you something, yeah, this is good, but can you tweak this? And you normally have maybe like 2-3 revisions. So like I said, there's positives and negatives to working online compared to working in person. Like there is working with VSTs compared to working with real musicians. So yeah, it just kind of depends on who you're working with, kind of thing. Yes?
In terms of mix down, do you find it harder to finish the mix and
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, it helps. If you learn how to process real instruments, it's a lot more different compared to processing a synth. Like, you're not going to heavily compress a string quartet because it's just going to lose the real sound of it. And I mean, yeah, it's a challenge as well sometimes to fit it all in, because let's say a dance mix can be heavily compressed and then suddenly you've got this dynamic, like, organic string on top of it, or an organic piano. But I think it just kind of matters on the song you're working on. And I think, like I said, it helps a lot when you kind of learn how to process real instruments, because it's completely different, especially like drums and stuff. Like, if you're processing an acoustic drum kit, like, that's completely different to processing just kick, hat, snare in electronic dance music, because you might have to send it to many drum groups, many drum buses. It's a complete game changer. So I think it just, like I said, it just depends on the song. But it is so useful, I think, to learn how to process real instruments, because you can apply it to electronic instruments as well. If you're using a synth and you're like, oh, this will be quite good if it can be layered with a piano, you can work out how to process it around that, and that's quite useful. Yeah.
Your studies help you to learn all this.
Yeah. Point Blank. Yeah, I mean, like, being a student at Point Blank, you're now surrounded by, my friends are all musicians. My friends they all make music. We don't, like, before Point Blank, I would have gone out with my friends, spoke about footy on the weekend, spoke about, just anything. But now it's, have you seen the album that came out? Are you getting that new plugin? Are you, do you want to hit the studio up? And instead of going out with your friends, like, for a drink and that, you go to a DJ studio and you just DJ back to back. And, like, that's a game changer. And being surrounded by that, like, you pick up so much. Like, some of my friends, they all make kind of electronic music, but some of them, like, complete different subgenres, and you learn so much from that. Some people will make more bass heavy things, and you learn from them, oh, that's how you process this. And in the same way I teach them things. And yeah, so, like, definitely. Yeah. Okay, sweet. Any more? Cool. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for coming, guys. It means a lot. Thank you. Cheers.